The Floor Academy podcast is sponsored by Tralama, the trade labor marketplace, where businesses can find skilled trade labor, such as flooring installers, and where flooring installers and other skilled tradespeople can find permanent or project work. You can set up your profile at tralama.com, TRALAMA.com, or download the app from the Apple App Store or Google Play. And remember, Tralama is always free for skilled tradespeople. Welcome to the Floor Academy podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Hedin, owner of Illustrious Hardwoods in Phoenix, Arizona. Our mission is to get you from playing contractor to running a successful and profitable business that supports your dreams. We are here to talk with flooring professionals from all over the country about the issues that matter to you. I want to encourage you to learn while you earn. Don't forget to check out our website and merch at flooracademypod.com or to become a patron over at patreon.com/flooracademy. Even $5 a month goes a long way to help this content to continue to be published. There are also links in the show notes. This week's guests are Trask and Rogue Bergerson of Bergerson Tile and Stone in Astoria, Oregon. Is Gen Z lazy? What about Millennials? What is the secret sauce to get qualified and motivated employees? Trask has hired them, and Rogue is on the cusp of being a Millennial and Gen Z. Listen in as we discuss their company dynamics, the values of different generations, and how we can make it all come together to hopefully get a new generation into an amazing industry. Trask Bergerson, are you on the line?
Yes, I am.
There you go. Welcome to the Floor Academy podcast. Rogue Bergerson, are you on the line?
Yes.
Awesome. Welcome to the Floor Academy podcast. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me.
Of course.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, my pleasure. This was facilitated by our good mutual friend Shannon Huffstickler. She was like, "You got to talk to my buddy Trask. You'll really like him. You got to talk to Trask." And now I've done that on multiple occasions, and man, you just won't shut up.
It's the way it works.
I love it though, man. They've been great conversations. The insights and the just. They've been really enjoyable. So, and Rogue, I met you shortly while we were all at Surfaces, and I heard nothing but good things about you. So, are you moving furniture? What are you doing?
It sounds like
my
doors.
yeah, my Bluetooth is really sensitive, so I just closed my door in my office.
Okay, it sounds like you're like dragging a couch across the office.
Yeah.
All right. So let's have you guys, let me get a quick introduction from each of you. Trask, you can go first. You know who you are, what you do, why you do it. And then we'll get into a little bit of multi-generational business and how to include the next generation in a business.
Absolutely. So, yeah, I'm one of the owners and a partner in a family business, Bergerson Tile and Stone. I don't remember when I began, but I came back to the business. I mean, my sister and I've joked many times, this is sort of like a cult, has all the trappings of a cult. And so you're indoctrinated early on, and this is just always what we did. We rinsed sponges on the weekend, we grouted tile. I grew up in a conventional brick and mortar flooring store where my mom and dad and uncles and everybody else ran the interiors aspect. We did at that time whole houses, and have evolved into a much more specialty company through the years. I came back to the company from my own company after college right at 1999, 2000. And we got more formal from there. And grew really rapidly from the peak, in the last housing bubble boom. We were over 30 employees. Currently, we're hovering just over 20, although we've lost a couple and gained a couple. But some days it feels like we're running a pirate ship. And we're running a lot of, different entities as we never did before. We're running a slab division. We have a cabinet division. We have installation and retail sales. So, we're wearing a lot of hats.
Yes.
And as any business owner does, but we are, for the area, we're a very big machine, so to speak. I mean, we have an accounting full-time staff. We have a full-time sales staff. We have a really big showroom and warehouse and fabrication facility. And we service about a 200-mile linear radius along the Oregon and Washington coast. I just lost my train of thought because somebody else came in. Back to the pirate ship, huh?
Well, so where are you located? So
we're on the Oregon coast, Astoria, Oregon.
So you got the Goondocks. How's Sloth and Chunk and the One-Eyed Willie doing?
Welcome to life in a small town. That was my mom's cousin's house that was featured in the Goons. So
nice.
Yeah, I was here. Yeah, but that's Astoria proper. The majority of our work services high-end residential, primarily vacation beach homes, second and third homes. Mm-hmm. It's about 70% of what we do, it seems like. So yeah, it's an interesting market, and it's a durable market that did okay even in the big downturn. It certainly affected us, mm-hmm. but we saw a unbelievable uptick during the COVID crisis, where people found new value in retreating to their vacation homes from formerly urban settings to, the solace and safety of the coastal communities, mm-hmm. which they weren't supposed to do, but they did, and they worked remotely.
Yes.
And so our business has grown exponentially over the past 2 years.
All right. And Rogue, how has joining the cult gone for you?
Actually, similarly, I wanted out. But in the summer times, always in high school and stuff, I would actually work at the shop. That's my job. I would go out on the cruise, mix mud, all that. Got out of high school. I went to maritime school. I actually wanted to jump on a ship, be a bar pilot, something along those lines. I ended up coming back. So here I am after a couple of years, did exactly the same, came back, mixed mud. Now I'm one of our lead installers, and I just work in the field.
Okay. And so you've worked your way up from being the mixing guy to leading. I'm assuming you have like an apprentice under you now that you're having to train and put through the, same skill sets you learned to get to where you are.
Yeah, exactly. I worked my way up finally we lost the guy who was teaching me at a certain point, so I had to just take a step up and kind of learn.
It's because he was lazy, right? He was young and lazy.
Maybe there was a long list of problems that we don't even probably want to get into.
All right. Oh no, okay. So that's kind of what I want to get into though. Is Trask, your dad started this, so Grandpa Bergerson has started this thing, running a store. You and your sister got involved and have grown it and taken it a couple different directions, and then. Now Rogue is getting involved, and so you came in as a solid like Gen X guy working with baby boomers, and maybe there was some of the greatest generation left around when you started doing some stuff.
Yeah.
That slowly evolved into now there was millennials coming in, and now Rogue is technically like on this tail end of millennial, early Gen Z, and if you're pulling any kids out of the high school that he went to, they are like solidly into Gen Z now. So
yes,
this transition, these different generations, I want to get into it because I don't think everybody realizes that we all act a little differently, and from like one to the next, it's not that big of a change. But when you start looking at your dad versus like Rogue, or even like we were talking before and you had said your sister just had a kid. So
yeah.
Your dad to where your sister's kid will be when he's like 5, right? Like that's just the amount that the world has changed in that period and the way you're raised and taught are so vastly different that it affects how you
Yeah,
run a business, how you bring people in, how you train them. And I'm
without
sick
a
of
doubt.
I'm sick of hearing that millennials and Gen Z are lazy, because millennials don't really have a choice but to work anymore, because we're all over the age of like 25 at this point for the most
Yeah.
part. So we have to be in the workforce and we need to be supporting ourselves. Yes, I know there's some still in mommy's basement, but we need to get over this they're lazy thing. Everyone's a millennial. We've moved on to a new generation entering the workforce, and now their lazy's being put on them. And so you actually have a solid amount of young talent working for you.
We do. We do. And well, and you had said,
Guys, though, too.
What was that, Rogue?
what was that?
And we go through a lot of young guys, too,
Okay.
I will say. But we do currently have a lot of them. We do have a lot of good employees that are my age and younger. I won't knock them completely, but
We go through a lot of older guys as well. We have traditionally. And in fact, there was a time where I rejected a younger generation in favor, and this was some years ago, and wanted to hire 50-year-old guys for very, very specific reasons. I've kind of come full circle on that. But I think when you talk about the vast differences, and in fact, to go all the way back, my dad really didn't start this company. My uncle did, who is much my dad's senior. My uncle now is, I think, almost 90. He was of that greatest generation. He did employ my dad much the same way that I was brought into the company and Rogue was brought into the company. And my uncle did cedar wood windows up until about a year ago.
Wow.
And very, very high-end custom millwork and cedar wood windows all over the world. But he had started what was called Bergerson Northwest Supply in 1967, 66. My dad came into that company as, a wood butcher, nail pounder, worked his way up into partnership with my uncle. And I grew up in that building of Bergerson Northwest, which was interiors and whole house building. They were building from the ground up. And so I grew up rolling around in the carpet barn, packing tile out for customers. Every day after school, the bus dropped me off at the traditional, Bergerson's flooring store. My dad got specialized. My dad, I should mention, is an aeronautical engineer. He's a rocket scientist. So he's a bit of a Renaissance man, to be sure. And he's done a really good job of getting out of the way, too. So much so that we had to bring him back into the fold a few times. But that's an aside. But with that, we're looking at a really big span of value structures that have kind of come and gone, policies, and those don't die out easily. My dad was, and his generation, understood the world very differently than we understand it. And I think it's best understood when we get into specifics. And Rogue and I were laughing just, at these examples. One of our most senior lead guys that really is responsible for training our guys is Wes, and he's a baby boomer. He's, been in the tile and stone industry as a third generation installer his whole life, came from Texas. He was actually one of our competitors, and we brought him into our company and bought his company out many years ago. And you see it expressed very differently. Just yesterday, we have a company-wide group text. People were texting, hey, the next meeting is at Tuesday at 7 a.m. And somebody, one of the young guys, Rogue's helper, had said something about, hey, this is, just a joke was inserted into the text. And then somebody else, this is the middle of the workday, by the way. Some of the other younger millennial guys are texting more cowbell and happy face, wah ha ha. After a bit of this, and I'm kind of laughing, here Wes pipes in. What the hell are you guys doing? Get back to work. That's the baby boomer in him. I'm looking at it sort of as a cusp, looking, and Rogue would identify with this, where he'd say, we can do both. I'm walking to the saw and I just texted in 2 seconds. That's inconceivable to a baby boomer. That phone doesn't come out during work hours because they're really into rules. They're really into black and white regulation.
Mm-hmm.
And, Gen Z, the millennials, not so much. They're very flexible. We can do both.
Yes.
There's not a black and white. There's a bigger continuum, and they roll their eyes. Wes looks at it as like, you just gave kids. They're just so damn lazy. They're on their phone. And they're looking at him like, dude, Grandpa's just stuck in 1964. Please.
Yes.
It's easy to see where we get adversarial. It's easy to see why it becomes us against them. And this is expressed all across our company. And, we can get more into the specifics as you like, but, I'm speaking different languages, and I'm conscious of it. And I'm even talking about it, like with Rogue. Like, I understand that they need information. They need feedback differently. They need praise and criticism vastly differently than Wes's generation and even Gen X. It's a vastly different communication structure. And we've got to sort of integrate and moderate our policies, our approaches, our interpersonal conversations. They're all tempered to fit very pragmatically the specifics of who I'm addressing and how we're addressing. And sometimes it has to be a hybrid. I'm translating constantly, where Rogue will say, I posted it on IG, and Wes will look puzzled, and I'll look over, Wes, that's Instagram. Okay, I don't have time for it. I know. Anyway, guys. I'm functioning as a translator half of my life. And that spans across our training, how we implement things, and just how we have discussions all the time.
And
I think you have to do that.
Yeah.
Yep.
So Rogue, how much have you influenced that? Like, how much have you had to train your dad in that he can be a go-between, in as much that you're probably a go-between for the people that are your same age, just to your dad, to be like, look, this isn't gonna like get Wes off our backs or something.
I think I'll actually say it this way. We were talking about this earlier. This maybe is even off the tangent. I think that we just think differently. The old school way is, I've done it this way we're going to do it this way. It works. Just step back and being like, hey, this way might be easier and it works just as well. Like the born in this hole, I'll die in this hole kind of thing. I compare it to foam to mud showers, exactly. Like, nobody wants to know and see that there's another easier way, potentially.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, there's new technology, and you're willing to evolve with it because that's been your whole life. Something has been you've been presented with that. Same with me, is that we've been given a platform, and it changes every couple of years, and then there's advancements to it, and there's different things that were popular, right? I can like date myself and be like, Facebook was or not even Facebook, like MySpace was the big thing, and then Facebook came along, and like then it moved, and everyone got on Instagram, and then or on Twitter, and then people got on Instagram, and then you had Snapchat, and now you have TikTok. Like it keeps, and the evolution happens faster and faster and faster with each iteration, that it's to try and keep up seems nearly impossible. And so how do you incorporate these changes into
delegate it
into a corporation, right? Like, where do you come up with your rules and training? Like, how do you develop a system that's going to function with these younger kids?
Well, I mean, actually, we just go to trainings. As simple as that sounds, with the NTCA. Schluter, Ladecrete, they come down to our shop, show us products, introduce them to us, that kind of thing. If that answers the question.
So you're taking advantage of the reps and the manufacturers and whatnot. But I'm still on site. Like, is there an official like training? Like, you're gonna, first you're gonna have, these are your responsibilities. When you can do all of this stuff, you get 10 cents more. And then when you can meet these responsibilities, you get another 10 cents. And you keep kind of working them up. Like, do you have an official training regimen that's written down and like everyone can follow. You can track progress.
It is somewhat unwritten, I would say. We've tried to implement paperwork with it, actually. I think it's all just kind of fallen away. There is a sort of a guideline, but it's put on by the lead setter. And I mean, it's just kind of like he's going to set tile. The first couple of days, he's going to work with you, show you how to mix mud, how to run cuts, all that stuff. And then once you start to get that dialed, over the next couple of weeks, months, there'll be, maybe there's a couple pieces of tile over in the corner that needs to be set. Layout's already been done. We'll send them over there and have them do that, judge their work, tell them what they can and can't do. All of that, and then until they're ready to start doing things on their own, then we'll slowly, give them a backsplash or a small floor, and or I'll start running his cuts.
Well, yeah. I'll interject in this, Kyle. That this is interesting. Again, talking about generational differences. We actually have an employee handbook, formal written.
Okay. We
have procedures written and bullet points and hierarchical scales for wage increases as they meet certain bullet points. This and that. You know who that functioned really well with? Gen X and baby boomers. That fell by the wayside, as Rogue noted, because, and we're trying to re-implement it, but because there's a diametrical opposition and an internal conflict in being able to be flexible and the younger generation jumping on board with it and being stuck in low trust, high rule, high regulation environments. I've sort of rejected the high ruling, high regulation environment because you have to trust. And so I reject that because I can't force the regulations anyway, really. I either trust them or I don't. But as far as the official implementation of training and all of that, we've had a policy, and it's officially written in the handbook, about training your replacement. We won't be held hostage. That goes back to the golden goose, protecting the golden goose. If I get run over by a bus, nobody has all the information. Well, nobody has all the.
Nobody heard that part of the conversation, but
that's right. When we can revisit that, but specifically, it didn't work to have all these written things because the millennials and the later generations really didn't seem to be into it. They didn't want to fill out that paperwork. It just seemed like a waste of time to be that structured, and they don't like it. I know from the feedback that they don't like it. So it got a bit more informal. My showroom manager, who's a baby boomer, and my field manager, Wes, who's a baby boomer, are all over it, and they're all over me. You got to be writing this stuff down and telling them where their next benchmark is. Rogue, you ask him, he's much more casual about it. They're much more fluid in their approach. So I'm kind of like, you know what? We're going to re-implement that softly and differently. I know I need to get back to it and touch, but I have to do it and give it to them in pieces and more digestible. And also, I've identified a major failure path with that rule and rigid regulation. So on one hand, we're implementing train your replacement. We will offer a reward to train and see an apprenticeship through till he's a setter and can take a helper. And if you do that and meet these benchmarks, you get rewarded. Here's the dichotomy. We've got to meet the schedule. We profit and loss every job. If you're falling behind on your profit and losses, we're going to have a discussion. What's going on? And my assumption is it's us, not you. We put you in a bad position, but what's going on? Well, it suddenly dawned on me that if we're pushing and saying you got to get done, you got to meet this, why aren't people getting trained? Well, what am I going to do? Throw myself under the bus? You got to meet this you got to meet this criteria of let's hit this benchmark for the profitability of this job. And I'm going to take the time to say, hey, let me show you what I'm doing on this layout here. That takes time. It takes time to explain to a new guy, as it should be done on the job, how we, because we can go to training here and there and it's great, but real world, every day, we're going to try and instill more knowledge and explain what we're doing. Well, that all takes too much time. So the guys in the field, the lead installers are like, you know what, just go run the cuts. I got to blast this wall out. And I'm not going to teach you. So there's a problem there that I've identified, and we're trying to be more dynamic and work around it and figure out ways to, and again, I'm not going to tell them. I'm going to ask for their input in a meeting. And I've begun doing this where I'm like, hey, what do you think about if like one day a week, you really focus on, or whatever, a couple of hours a day. Hey, why don't you help me with this layout? Why don't you do this layout? Or maybe it's your turn to do the dry pack and I'll mix mud for you. And again, if I asked Wes, the old guard from the baby boomer generation, what do you think? His absolute response will be, I could tell you, and Rogue will laugh, I don't care. You tell me you're the boss. I'll do whatever you say. That's a baby boomer response. Yes. I want structure and I want leadership and I want to be told what to do. And I don't care if it's dumb, I'll do it. And if I tell that to a millennial without asking for their feedback, they'll look at me and go, that's dumb. Why? Why would I do it that way? There's a better way. I saw a TikTok video on it. It's stupid. You could do it better.
Yes.
So they need to be a part of, they very high value on participation, and my opinion means something and the culture means something. Whereas the baby boomers, culture on your own time. I'm here for the job.
Sure, I want to punch in, I want to punch out, I want to get my paycheck at the end of the week, I want to support my family, and done.
Yeah. Although there again, there's exceptions and weird crossovers. I want to punch in and punch out. That's not true of baby boomers. Wes's phone is on 24/7 because he owes it to the company. He's a company man. I'll answer my phone on the weekends. On Sunday night, I'm thinking about Monday. And by the way, he's even told our guys this. Y'all owe Bergerson Tile. You're in bed Sunday night at 9:00 because you owe that company. You're well rested and you better be here. Now, if I call a millennial on Saturday, I've actually heard this quote. Would you like me to clock in? I'm at the beach. They value their personal liberties. And us as Gen Xers saw our baby boomer parents become workaholics and alcoholics. And we also value liberty and work, private life balance. Put it at a premium. We're not, the millennials are not, quote, company men. Like, if you want me to work, then pay me. But there's some really interesting, not very easily partitioned differences.
So you say that, and that they're not company men. However, we had another conversation in that you've built something to sort of like it's not on par with like a Google or a GoDaddy, but you have an area that's set up to kind of entertain these guys. So Rogue, do you come in and hang out with the younger guys when they're like like on the weekends? Are you guys in there after hours playing foosball or, talking about surfing? And like, is it a thing where like everyone really gathers and it stays after hours to just be with each other?
Oh, so as far as coming in on like Saturday and Sunday, I try not to come to work, honestly, on Saturday and Sunday, though I do work often on the weekends. Usually the time to socialize is usually we start work at about 7:00, but a lot of guys come in at 6:30. We got a coffee machine, usually donuts or something on the counter. And everybody will go in and sit there for a half an hour. Some of the talk is on what they did on the weekend and whatever. But a lot of the time it's good conversation. Somebody saying what they had trouble with and they're bouncing off of Wes what they could do next time better. Things like that. And my dad was talking about how one of our older lead ladies in the office was kind of bickering that we would come in. We were on the clock for 30 minutes. We were just sitting there drinking coffee or whatever. And how it's useless, but it's building relationships, and as well, you're talking about work. A lot of the time, it's valuable time, and it's a good time to rest and get your head in the game before you go out there.
So, I mean, you're doing the standard coffee thing that has been around for generations, but it does exist within that generation, but I think you look at it differently. Like, I think a Gen Xer is going to go and stand around at the water cooler per se and we're going to talk about whatever reality television show or big sitcom was going on at the time, and we're trying to waste time and unwind in the middle of the business day because we're stuck in a cubicle or whatever, whereas you're coming in early and then talking about work. But I think you're building an environment where you guys are encouraging each other, and you're like, there's more community to it. I think that's, if don't get me, like, this is my assumption based on kind of what I've seen about that generation develop so far, but community is like a big part of it. You want to belong to something as opposed to just saying like, I work at Bergerson Tile and Stone. Like that when there's a bunch of you that are all doing it, it actually means something. And that's your identification, like I grew up and I listened to punk music. So I was a punk kid, and, or there were the jocks and whatnot. Like, are you identifying groups differently now? And so you're in a workplace culture, and that's the group you identify with and you want to be a part of.
Yeah, no, our guys, actually, we all have a very strong relationship. I'd be more than tempted to call the guys a friend of mine who I'm not afraid to, go over to their house and hang out or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a super healthy thing. As well as that, gosh, I lost where I was going.
Well, Kyle, you're right in the sense, if I interject, and
mm-hmm.
Again, I see back to the example of Wes, like we work really hard to have a real strong open door policy. And I had mentioned in conversation with you, there's what we call the surfer bath or whatever, what it alludes to is we've gotten a lot more flexible. Like a lot of our guys like to surf. One of the guys, his name is that surfs, and he works in our slab fabrication shop. There's days where I'll see a wetsuit dripping and a surfboard in the back of his truck, and he'll just be coming in. But he came in at 6 a.m, did some polishing. Then Wes is in the office, at noon, and he sees 4, and he's like, "Hey, I want to talk about the bench." He's like, man, I just caught some waves. I'm gonna get back to work pretty soon. And Wes looks at me like, "Is 4 working today?" I'm like, well, yeah, he worked from 6 till 11, and then he went and surfed till 1, and I think he's gonna go back to work. And he just shakes his head like, I don't get it. He doesn't understand that at all.
Yeah. We're such a 9 to 5, a 7 to 3, right? We're 8. We got to put in our 9 hours with our 1 hour lunch and do it. It's very rigid. It's stern.
And that went back to when we do vehicle maintenance, but the guys would, especially in our old shop, pull in. There's always somebody doing work on their truck on the side. Wes would come down and have to candidly take me aside and say, "I don't know what you're thinking here, but tools are going to disappear." Because I'm letting these guys come in willy-nilly, according to him, into my shop, and I'm giving them the keys. And he's like, "Man, we should put up cameras and just be very careful about who we give keys to." And I'm like, "Yeah, you're not getting the community aspect of this. It's really important to them." And, these guys need to fuel that. They need to have that camaraderie and culture where they can come hang out anytime. You want to pull your truck in here Sunday, Saturday afternoon and work on your stereo system or work on your lift kit or whatever, it's all available to you. You don't have to ask, And Wes was, to this day, he's been with us like 20 some years. He'll call me, "Do you mind if I work on my vehicle down there?" I'm like, "Yeah, you have keys to everything. Why would you ask me? I just want you to know I'm." And he'll call me when he leaves just to let you know. And I'm thinking like, wow, very different. And it's a matter of respect to him. And I honor that and I understand it. But the younger guys, they get it intuitively. Like, this is, it's cool. No worries. Go ahead. And they don't ask for permission anymore because it's understood very intuitively by them.
Well, here's I struggle with, so I grew up working at a country club. Like, I started caddying during the summers when I was 13. And you were told, like, you call them sir or ma'am, you or Mr. whatever, and like that's the way it is, right? And that's the way it's going to be. And so that was something that stuck with me. And so now I do Cub Scouts with my kids. And a lot of the leaders are like, oh, call me Ryan. I'm like, no, that's Mr. Ruggiero. Like you need to call them Mr. Ruggiero. And my wife is of the exact opposite approach to where she's like, if I tell them to call me a name, you don't go behind my back and tell them to call me Mrs. Hadeen. And I'm like, no. You call her Mrs. Hadeen. I don't care. But to me, I see a problem in like kids don't respect adults in my mind as much. Like we're all equals the minute you give them that ability to call you by a first name, right? Like there's no longer an authority in it. And so that's my hang up with it. But there is a change in how this rogues generation is operating, and maybe you are an authority figure even though you're Bob. Like and I have to get over it. So but the fact that you're opening things up and you're like, yeah, here, have, come, go, like it's very different from how you read these stories when everyone's going through apprentice after apprentice after apprentice online, and they're lazy and they're no good. Like maybe they're lazy and no good because you never do anything but yell at them and you don't value any input. Like you've taken a very different approach. So Rogue, how much effect have you had on that approach?
On new employees?
Just like, have you had to go to your dad and be like, look, you need to stop that. Like that way's not going to work anymore. Or is your dad pretty observant and keen? Like, does he like eye in on the details and he's picked up a lot of this stuff on his own?
We'll discuss things throughout, not just one head. A lot of the time, if there's a question on the way that we do things, we'll bring in, Wes, my dad, whoever, maybe a couple other our lead guys, and we'll go over the way that everybody does it, what the new proposition is, if we think it's worth, the pros, the cons, and all of that. And I mean, by bringing us all together, it's so many years of experience and different perspectives that we're really able to refine the way we do things.
Yeah, but Rogue, you just take things too. I don't think they ask for permission the way you're kind of alluding to. Like Rogue took on our, I don't know, social media platform and just ran with it. And he was doing it anyway. That was sort of normal for him to video, document everything and put it to music and quick little blurbs. I don't understand that well.
Yeah.
And enough, again, I needed to get out of the way. I look at it and I'm like, that's not really my music, but actually it's pretty cool. And I have to get out of the way and recognize that he's getting a lot of traction with it. But he didn't really come to me. He'll just say, hey, I think you got to check out TikTok. And I'll look and he's already made an account.
Yeah.
And I'm still trying to navigate the icons and crap. There's no instructions. And I'm still figuring it out. And he's just running with it. And I'm like, and he's saying things to me like, I think this has a lot of potential. I think you should really look at it. And to the point where we kind of formalized it and started paying incentive. Like, I don't really get it, but you know what? Do it. Just go for it.
But I mean, is he coming to you and saying like, Dad, you need to approach the way you like is he coming in and telling you need to like look at a different way of hiring these kids? Is he telling you have to communicate with them differently? Like, are you getting inside tips from him on how to better do it? Or are you that observant and just keying in on like what's important to them through small conversations?
I don't get a choice. They don't give you a choice, honestly. And it's not because I'm a keen observer. It's just that I'm a pragmatist in the sense that, and that's an important distinction. Wes will ask about what if we do this. Rogue and his cohorts in that generation will just do it. And they'll just tell me about it afterwards. If it's something really big, they might say, hey, here's what we're thinking of doing. What do you think? It's presented very differently. They just do. And in that sense, they're beyond not lazy. We just, again, aren't speaking the same language and understanding it. But they're already proactive enough to like have been doing it. They just don't articulate it the same way.
And one big problem is people thinking they know more than they do. Sometimes you get who thinks he can just do anything, and then you start letting them go, and then you come into the room and whatever, they're doing something that's just completely wrong. but they're just going for it because they think they know, and they know just enough to get themselves into trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and that's a great Rogue. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but we were just talking about this, Kyle. This is another great distinction. Millennials and the Gen Y are the best hypocrisy detectors I've ever seen in my entire life. They detect hypocrisy and BS so fast that it will make your head spin. I see it. So, for example, we had several years ago Lady Creek come in. Guy actually was a great rep. He knew his stuff, but he's an older guy. And he wasn't really an installer.
Mm-hmm.
To me, he was giving a by-the-book, standards-based presentation that was great. I looked over our guys, and all but the old guys were on their phones, and their faces had glazed over because they could see that the way that the guy held the trowel was wrong. They could see by the way he touched mud, and he just wasn't fluid and familiar enough with the intricacies of how an installer handles tools. They knew he was full of crap, and everything else he said from there was not valid.
Yeah.
And to me, I'm like, hey, he's still presenting the information, and I have a packet here that they were gone and lost immediately. And the next group that came in, or the next rep that came in, grabbed their attention immediately because he ran a trowel, he spoke their language, he gave immediate indicators that he'd spent time on a job site that they knew. And as soon as I saw it, they were all like, okay, he's cool, he knows what he's doing. Everything he said was gospel. They identify BS very, very keenly.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a big one.
Okay. So what about how are you training them? Like if you're bringing somebody in, would you rather start them off with, say, Rogue, who they can better identify with? Or if it sounds like Wes is not installing as much as he's like eyeballing everything and keeping the entire show running. But like if you have another Gen X or like a, baby boomer Gen X guy in place that's like on the older side, are you throwing him to the wolf, and then that guy's coming back and complaining this kid can't do anything, he doesn't listen, he's not da da da? Whereas if you give him to Rogue, like the feedback that you get is completely different from how the day went.
I'm really
Oddly, I was just gonna say that. Oddly enough, go Rogue. Go ahead.
I'm terribly critical. I messiness is my biggest thing. I'm like OCD, and the biggest thing I look for is like, when somebody dumps a bag of thin set in there and they spill it on the floor, and then they just like walk through it all day, or they just like pile all their offcuts up in the saw and make a mess. I'm terribly critical. I'm the executioner for new guys. We give them out at random too. I've totally taught 40-year-old men how to set tile, and it's totally weird me to tell him, hey, go clean this bucket, but that's how it's got to be sometimes.
Yeah.
And there's no sort of order that we give guys out to. It's help goes where help is needed.
Do you feel you have a better? Sorry, 1 second, Trask. Do you feel you have a better ability to train the younger guys though than the older guys? Like, even though you're critical, and I get that, like, look, man, a clean, like everything in its place and a place for everything. I'm a firm believer in that. Like, so I keep a, trash bag under my saw. The cuts go in it as soon as I make them. I'm the same way. Like, I want a clean work site. And especially because I do all residential remodel, like appearance matters to that homeowner. They want to see you respecting their home. So I get being critical, but do you find it easier to train somebody closer in the same age to you because you have more relatable things than when you're handed the 40-year-old guy? And do you have a higher success rate? Do those people tend to stick around longer?
I don't know if any stick around longer. It's easier for me to tell a younger guy what to do. I feel like there's more respect. An older guy doesn't respect you as much. He doesn't think you paid your dues, probably.
Mm-hmm.
And the same goes for a homeowner. All the time I come in and I'm introducing to a homeowner and they ask me who's setting their tile.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm young. But back to training young guys, I don't know if I see better or worse, turnouts between young guys and old guys. Although yeah, I don't know.
Trask, you got any
Say-
information on that?
Well, in general, if we bring a new guy into the fold, I think, at least with respect to our experience, the younger guys are more critical. They're more, I don't know if I think actually, I'll go out on a limb and say, I think that they make fast decisions maybe better than an older generation. They are really good at distilling a lot of information and a lot of cues very quickly. They're good focused learners, and they're good at, I don't know, I sound crazy saying this. They're good at identifying people. When I've listened to Rogue, when I've listened to the younger guys, I've been astonished at how accurate their judgments and interpretations or impressions of personality types are accurate. But I also make the assumption, if this young guy doesn't have success here, it may just be an individual thing. And so Rogue usually calls me by noon and says, you can have this guy back. I have no use for him. Mm-hmm. Very much. That's a quote. I may give him to another guy, or more often than not, I may give him to Wes and vice versa, the older guy. I'm surprised at how much more patient Wes can be with guys and second and third chances. And astonishingly, if I've been rejected by two of the millennials and I hand him to Wes will take 3 days. The millennials took 4 hours, but Wes will take 3 days and thoroughly make sure that the guy is not worth his salt and he can't pack the gear. But he'll take 3 days to tell me the same thing.
Mm-hmm. I can that Wes will go through and he'll actually, one thing I'll say the older generation is they will voice what they want a lot more. I won't tell a lot of the time. I'll tell you something one time.
Yeah.
I'll lead by example. I'll be like, okay, watch me. This is what I do, and I expect them. Next time I turn around, I've washed off the trowel 7 times, and then I turn back around after youth or taking a break or whatever, dirty, and I'm just like, what the heck, man? Well, you've watched me clean this all day. You weren't doing anything. Why didn't you clean it? This guy's worthless. Or, something along of that nature. Something he's watched me do 1,000,000 times. Mm-hmm. He's not doing it. I'm busy. And instead of doing it, stand there. And that's always a huge turn off for me.
I think some of that's going to be an age thing, right? Like, you're still very young. You're early 20s, correct? 23?
Yeah.
Something like that, right?
Yep.
So it's, oh my, Trask, you're killing me, man. I swear.
Pardon me.
It sounds like you're just moving the entire office.
Sorry.
It's, some of that comes with age. Like, I think, the patience to tell somebody the same thing 15 times and still get a poor result. I mean, I've been telling my son since he was 2 and could comprehend it. He at 2, he's, life's not fair. I was like, no, it's not. Like, but I want it to be fair, or it's not fair that, my sister gets this. And I'm like, what have I taught you about life? And he won't even say it. He'll just give me a dirty look and walk away because he knows what I want him to say. But
Wes and our older guys will pester you so much, and they'll tell you to do things so many times it's annoying. And I'm completely the polar opposite. I'll tell you a couple of times, and if after a couple of times you just aren't getting it, then I just feel like I'm wasting my time. And Wes will keep preaching it to the point where all the time I feel like I hear Wes in the back of my head, unplug all the cords at the end of the day, or something like that. Stupid.
But it works, right? Because now you hear him in the back of your head, and so there is a proven factor to it. But it is a generational thing, I think, in that look, I generally pick things up quick. I get it. Okay. I forgot one time. Shut up. I'm going to move on. That's the way I am. And I try and get these guys to do things. And I'm like, okay, look, this is how we're going to do it. Can you just move a little faster? You've been doing it for 3 months now. Can you maybe go faster? You've got the process down. Just move.
And Wes is exactly that way, man. He won't beat around the bush. He'll tell you that. Why are you so slow? And I have trouble asking somebody that right to their face, why are you so slow? But Wes, no problem with it, man.
Mm-hmm.
Guys act like that. They're blunt.
But it once again, I think some of that's an age thing and some of it's going to be a generational thing because you guys weren't necessarily like you didn't go to school and get, it was laid out we're going to do it this way and then we're going to do it this, like the way even school went, it was a very systemized thing and you were told one way to do it and that's the way you do it. There was no other way. Whereas I was shown like 5 different ways to solve a math problem and whatever way worked best for me, I was allowed to do it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so I wonder if that now rolls over into how you train people. And so you're going to say like, look, you clean the trowel this way. And that's where your rigidity lies, right? I'm going to tell you once, I'm going to show you once, and then you're going to do it.
Isn't
Yeah.
that ironic?
I'll take it back. Actually, this is a great example. I use cleaning the bucket a lot to weed people out. And you know what? Wes will go out and he'll be like, come on, I'm going to show you how to clean a bucket. To me, it's like, who doesn't know how to clean a bucket, man? Go clean the bucket. But, they'll bring you back a dirty bucket. And I'm like, this is what clean is to you, really? Like, would you eat out of this bucket?
Mm-hmm.
But you don't say that.
Maybe it's on me because I didn't show him what clean was. I don't know.
No, what Rogue proceeds to do at that point is call me and say, you're wasting your time here. I don't have any use for this guy. He doesn't get it. Those are usually his words. And again, ironically, his rigidity there is an expectation of you should get this.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not getting this, I'm sorry. And I hand him to Wes, and Wes will spend 8 hours showing him again and again and again how to do it. And then finally say, yeah, I don't think this guy gets it.
Yeah, well, I have the same thing trying to teach somebody to sweep a room, right? Like you have to clean the room in order to lay any kind of flooring.
Right.
And you give
That's
somebody
right.
a broom and you're like, sweep it. And then I'll give them one time on their own. I'm like, here, go sweep the room. Right? Like that's the best first day test. And then you walk in and you're like, okay, now I'm going to sweep the room. And then you get a pile 8 times bigger than what they have. And you're like, next time you sweep the room, you need to sweep the room like that. And then you let them go to the next room and they do the same thing again. They're like, it's ready. And you go in and you re-sweep it and you're like, no, it's not. Look at all this stuff. Like, what are you doing?
That's one of my biggest tests is, go clean something. And I won't just tell them to go clean it. I'll clean the first room with them or whatever. That's a great example. And we'll see, this is what clean means. And then you send them over to do it on their own. And then it's just like, what the heck, dude? What did I just show you 10 minutes ago?
So where's the gap? Is it what are we missing with kids your age that we need to show them? Is it patience? Is it self-respect? Is it in how we teach? What are your insights, Rogue? Why can we not get them to do it?
I don't know. I feel like they gotta help themselves. Help me. Help me help you.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the guys that we have don't struggle with that issue. We have a bunch of guys who get it, they do it right, young, and then I think there's just a group of people who just, I don't know, maybe they'll never get it.
Well, Kyle, what was our experience as Gen Xers? When we swept the room wrong, I think I would be accurate in saying when I was trained to do those things in the formative and apprenticeship stages, and I did them wrong, I was yelled at. And in fact, things were thrown at me. And that's just okay.
Mm-hmm.
But I also grew up with this thing like, do you really think that I'm not doing my best? And by yelling at me like, oh, okay, now I'll do better that you browbeat me. I remember distinctly thinking, I'll never yell at somebody like that. It doesn't produce results.
Yeah.
And so those are kind of lessons learned through that generation. However, it is interesting that the expectations are maybe every bit as strict in our experience with the millennials, but they won't yell at you. They'll just cut you loose. You don't get it. I'm sorry.
And, I can't point a finger at any sort of age groups that's better or worse. There's been plenty of 50-year-old guys who couldn't clean a frickin' bucket and they just couldn't cut it,
Yeah.
Or, and it goes both ways. I don't want to point at all at young guys. We have a bunch of young guys.
Yeah, no, and that's not what I'm trying to do here. And I don't want to make it seem like we're trying to point out like, look, you guys are successful. You have a bunch of young guys working for you, but I think there's got to be like some kind of secret sauce that has made that work a little bit better because you have found some. And look, these guys, they're not diamonds in the rough. Like there are people out there that want to do this, but I think a lot of times they're going to find a guy or a gal running a business. They're going to get frustrated after the first day of them not being able to clean a bucket or sweep a room, or, you know, for the hardwood guys, they're in there scraping a corner and they're just not putting in any effort. And then you cut them loose. Whereas like there's gotta be some level to communicate on, because we can't have an entire generation of people that just aren't going to work. That's not going to happen. And you're not all going to get a desk job and magically be okay. Even at a desk job, you have to put in some amount of effort. And so
I think if there's some secret sauce, one thing we've done, and being a more diverse company has been obviously really helpful in this realm. But this is generally speaking, humans have a variety of aptitudes. And I'm a real believer in, finding that particular aptitude for this person. And I mean, I'll think well outside the box as much as possible. I'll send a guy out on the tile crew. And if he's a good guy or a good gal, then they're willing to work, and have good ethics, but they just don't have a high I've literally had somebody that didn't have very good vision, and they weren't good with details.
Big one.
Well, but maybe they have a different skill set or aptitude. So Ford didn't work out on the tile front, but I've got to find a place for him because he's a great guy. So I'll dig deeper and I'll give him, maybe he'll work out at the slab shop. Maybe he wants to fabricate. Maybe he's a good slab installer. If that didn't work out, maybe Chris will take him in the cabinet end of it. Maybe he's better with that sort of thing. Maybe he's good at demo. Maybe he's a good candidate for the sales staff on the sales floor. I mean, I've gone through like several iterations where I've sat down with guys going, look, I don't know where your place is. I really like you.
A lot, actually, and we shuffle people a lot by personality, if I come to think of it. For example, a lot of times we're fine with switching helpers. I don't see it's weird if, one of our other crews wants to trade helpers or something because it's not working out for them. And maybe my helper gets along with Corey really well. And right now we have a great balance of like personalities that align. Like Clint and his guy they're like the same people. They're both introvert and quiet. They don't talk very much. Corey and his guy are the same way. Me and my guy talk a bunch. We play music loud. We get along great, and it works in that sense.
Well, I think that's the benefit of you having a larger company, to be honest, is that you have you have more options than, myself, who, I'm by myself. I want to bring in a new apprentice and I've got one spot there. I don't have anywhere else to send you. So you can either get this or you got to go. And but I think that's where we have to stop looking at everybody as competition. If we know who else is in our area, who else may be hiring, who, maybe somebody needs a salesperson. Maybe the company I know that's slightly bigger and a retailer needs a warehouse guy. Hey, look, it's not working out with me. Here's 3 other people you can call. Like you showed up on time, you gave effort, but this isn't the right fit. Let me try and help you find something else over here.
One of the best examples I ever heard of that was an owner is Scott Perrin. He spoke at coverings a number of times, was the owner of Big Bob's. It's a big, I think, chain flooring store in the upper Midwest. And he paid one of the most amazing, and I've listened to it dozens of times, presentations on prospecting for profits and talking about the internal culture of your business. And he has a thing where and they go through a lot of employees. He has never fired a person. What he has done through the years is just that. It didn't work out. And after 2 weeks or a month, we sit down in the office and he finds a place, because this guy's a social dynamo. And he'll say, I think I got a buddy that is looking for somebody, and I think it's more along the lines of something you're looking for. And he would always recommend, and before he let them go, he would have 2 or 3 options for them for better gainful employment. It has paid off in spades, because some of these guys went on to be presidents of banks. And guess where they shop? Man, I owe that guy an unbelievable amount of gratitude, because he didn't just fire me. He helped me navigate my life better.
Yeah.
And he's done this for years.
And you know what? It's dang
huge.
Hired from Bergerson Tile Stone, I will say. There's been a lot of guys who had a lot more strikes than I thought they were.
Yeah, and some of them came through.
Some of them did. Some of them were on their last leg. Now they're great guys.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It takes time. It's going to take the right person, and you guys have some options in that. Now, Rogue, when you were going to high school, did your school still have like any trades programs, or was all that stuff cut out?
Sort of. When we were seniors, we were able to go take a college course down at what's called MERTS, and they had, sort of like welding classes, automotive, and things like that. So,
but it's pretty late.
Yeah.
So,
at Astoria, there was a program. But we do run into the problem of a lot of young guys who have never used a drill before. And it's like, what am I going to do with this guy? You don't know how to use a drill.
Actually, one of the second guy I ever hired, and I kept him around for like 9 months. Then I let him come back after 6 months for like another 6 months. I tried to make everything work, and it just didn't. There was one speed, and it was slow. Like, he showed up, but there was one speed, and it was slow.
What was compelling about him that kept him around that long?
Because I wanted it to work so bad. I'd invested so much time that I just didn't want to give up. Like, I was stubborn. Yep. And that was the problem.
I think I'm quick to judge because I'm like, why am I going to waste 2 weeks of my time trying to make this guy work? Screw him. Get him out of here, Maybe, but it is worth it sometimes. So sometimes those guys are totally salvageable. I don't know.
Well, he'd never used the drill. He'd never used the tool. Like, just,
measure, yeah.
Correct. So, like, it was like teaching a baby, but it just came down to finally I was like, okay, you have one speed. It's slow. This is nice. Like, I'm able to do slightly, a little bit more every day, but I'm never going to be able to put you out on a project by yourself. Then he picked up a girlfriend and stopped showing up on time. And I said, you know what? Like, we're done here. So,
people just they don't have a drive to learn. Like, at some point I didn't either. I wanted to be a professional bass fisherman and all this other stuff. And I didn't really care. I showed up to Kyle because I buy fishing lures. And out of nowhere, I kind of got obsessed with it and I learned. And then once you get obsessed with something and you make it a point of your own to actually figure something out, then you start opening avenues. And some people just don't get obsessed with it. Some people are just like, same thing every single day. I got to show up and mix mud. Yeah. Whatever. Get the day again.
But Kyle, what you said, it does have a place. So we've had a number of those wobblers. And the wobblers usually are identified by a few pretty consistent traits, especially in this environment where good help is hard to find. They may not be magnificent. They may not be not have a high skill aptitude, but they show up every day. They're cheerful. They're predictable. Economically speaking, I mean, it's not the great big ups and downs. It's just right down the middle that's profitable. Sometimes the predictability and slow and steady can be acceptable.
This is where I'll debate you, because for your size company, when you're running 20 guys, you can have a couple of predictable, mediocre guys.
Absolutely.
At my size, I need that stellar guy that I know is going to be able to replace me, and then I can go find him the stellar apprentice so I can get off the floor and run it, right? Like, I don't have a choice. I can't do mediocre because I can't put a mediocre guy out there to complete a project. I have to find the rock star. And I think that's where a lot of the beef comes in, and why these guys, all these other business owners in the industry are getting frustrated, because we're trying to find all these rock stars, and it gets old. Like, I went through another one.
The pool we're picking from is pretty small too. We're hiring. We've been hiring for months. It's not like we have anybody kicking down our door.
Well, we're always hiring.
So what I was going to ask, Rogue, is, do you feel that because college was probably forced down your throat from the time you were a baby, and not by your parents per se, but just by the education system in general, and then there was no trades like being taught in your middle school and high school, so that a lot of these kids went unidentified and they were never given the opportunity. Do you think that's led to the predicament we're in? Because the kids that were going to be told, like, hey, maybe college isn't for you, you might want to consider something else, go look at this program over here.
I'm not sure. Maybe it's because they were preached like that. Maybe their parents maybe pushed a lot of people too. Like, don't be like me. Don't work on your hands and knees. Get a college education. Work at a desk. I do definitely think it's a good idea to have, wood shop and things like that. Basic understanding of reading a tape measure, using a drill, helping yourself. If all else fails, a trade is a great thing, and a lot of people see that.
Well, case in point, one of our better accounts is a family of German builders, and they're real Germans. Hannes, Gunther, Alex, Wolfgang. They're from Germany, and they're all multi-generational, and they're fabulously skilled. And I talked to them a lot about this specifically. They're not really concerned in Germany about hurting feelings. If college isn't for you, that's identified with sort of aptitude and ASVAB tests by the 8th grade at the latest. And you're directed and tracked. And of course, tracking in education is a dirty word in the United States, but you're tracked to your best option. And and that best option includes cabinet maker or welder, there's absolutely no shame in that. You're directed into a trade school to optimize your future. We don't do that. And
I would probably be better off right now if somebody plucked me out of high school when I was a freshman, once I had been understanding enough of literature and all of that stuff and just threw me in the trade, I'd probably be further and make more money.
Absolutely. Well, it's just you're given the option, and we're not giving that option anymore. The only option that we're looking at is qualified labor through trade organizations, but the schools are not participating with us. It's tragic.
Yes. And I think there's a stigma, right? Oh, that's blue collar. That's dirty. You don't want to do that. Don't go be a plumber.
Yes.
And you see it within the trades itself, right? Like, I get when somebody has built something and sent their kids to school and they're like, I don't want my kids to do what they want to, what I do and ruin their body. But I think you're demeaning yourself and you're devaluing yourself. Like, I am proud of what I have, what I've built, and what I do. I make a difference in people's homes and lives. I bring joy to them. I think what I do is very
respectable living.
Correct.
You can make a very respectable living being a gray collar worker.
Exactly. And so if my children chose to do this, I would be proud of them that they wanted to go and do that. Like, the sentiment where, like, I don't want my kids to have to do it. Well, so is it because you're slaving away for low wages? Because I haven't really done that yet. Like, I got out of that trap pretty quick, and I was able to build a business that charges enough to let me be profitable and have some finer things in life and save some money. So money's not the issue. I'm trying to build something to where I'm getting off my knees. And so is it that they haven't been able to build that thing that they can
money may be
feel?
Part of the issue. I do have some people contact me about coming to work for us, and we lose them before they ever come to an interview because they don't like the starting wage of a helper. It's hard to make that cake sometimes, but you got to suck it up. There is better money in it, but you got to learn. It's just like anything. This college, basically, you got to learn. In college, they don't pay you. You're losing money.
But we had that discussion, Rogue. We had that discussion with Rogue really early on. We were very transparent about our books. We make a decent living, and we had showed him from a pretty early age, like, there is a clear path here beyond this working wage, and there is an incentive here. We make a really decent living, and we get lots of liberty and, time on our own, a world on our own terms. And so we actually talk numbers frequently, right up to this point where we're showing ownership and saying, hey, this is what you could make in a dividend check down the road.
Yeah.
Here's what you could make through bonuses. Here's what you could make by, gaining more skills and being more dynamic within this company. And you will be given ownership at some point. Yeah. And I think it's important not to say, I don't want you. My dad never said, I don't want you to do what I do for a living, because my dad was really keen early on in realizing his own worth and value and charge top dollar for it. So I was never told that. I was always told, here's our dirty little secret. Some of these doctors that we work for are so in debt that we're actually making as good a money as they are.
Well,
and I was told again and again that this is very, very much a worthwhile pursuit financially.
I 100% agree, especially with the way you've scaled it, right? Like now it's even more valuable. And so there's
Of course.
there's pros and cons. Go ahead, Rogue.
Okay, this may be another thing. I mean, maybe we're just like a staging point, you know? There's a lot of people who go to college and then they drop out and then they're like, shit, back to the drawing, you know? Maybe we're just that stepping stone in between where they're like, hey, I just need money, I need to pay rent right now while I figure out what I actually want. I'm not sure if that's a relevant standpoint. That we're a lot of those people mid-age.
Maybe.
I think we are in the construction industry.
You know, a lot of people just pay their bills. We just hired a guy like that, actually. He's going to be one of our cabinet people who moved back. You know, his dream didn't work out. He needed to pay the job. Not what I want to do, but it's pay the bills for now while I figure out what I actually want to do. Maybe that's where the lack of passion is coming from. I don't know.
Trask, is that coming from your phone that there's like a bunch of background noise and yelling?
Yeah. He's in the office.
Okay.
In mine, I'm in a quiet room. I don't hear any feedback.
Okay. It's gone now. It must be Rogue. Are you like outside the shop and there's like people in there yelling or something?
No, I don't hear anything.
Now it's quiet. All right. What? Now it's gone. All right. Maybe it's my phone being weird. Who knows? So I think where was I going to go? So one of the things that my son, you know, I can ask him, hey, do you want to like install with me one day? And he'll flat out tell me flooring is stupid. So he's almost 12. And that response is fine to me. He's very artistic, left brain, I'm like, look, okay, don't do floors. Like maybe you could learn tile. Like there's ways to be really artistic with that. And, you know, no interest right now. And that's fine. I'm not going to force him to do anything. But
well, you know, not a lot of people come into the construction industry and be like, this is what I've wanted to do since I was a little kid. When I was a little kid, I didn't want to be a tile setter either.
Correct.
It doesn't sound that good. Maybe that's another problem.
Well, but we have the conversation around, you know, we'll sit down and eat dinner and I'm telling my wife about a project or, you know, how the business is going or what, like you were probably around the same conversations of like numbers and costs and things like that. And so one day he's sitting there talking to me and he tells me he wants to do this thing for his birthday where, you know, you can rent a seat on this World War II airplane. And it's like a 20-minute flight, but it's like $300. And he was like, but I have to have an adult go with me. I was like, I'm not spending $600 for a 20-minute flight. He was like, no, Dad, look, okay. See, the plane's really old and it needs a lot of maintenance. And then they have to put it in the hangar and they got to buy all the fuel and they have to rent the space. And like, he started breaking down why it was so expensive to me. And I was like, I'm really proud of you that you pay attention, but no. And so I wonder how far those conversations go in families like ours versus the families where they're still struggling paycheck to paycheck or they're subbing the jobs and struggling project to project, right? Like,
yeah, there's not a lot of people who probably have a great foresight. They're like, shoot, man, Dad's working 14 hours a day. We're not making that great of a living. It doesn't sound that appealing. Not a lot of I'm a tile setter on purpose. It's like,
so yeah, I'm wondering how much does that put there's more of a stigma even then within blue collar families that like, look, it's dirty to do this. You don't want to do it. Whereas I'm putting like a magical like spin on everything. And I think what we do is sexy. So I try and make everything we do look sexy. Like I want it to be big and glamorous and look how I made this lady so happy and she absolutely loves what I put in her home. Like it's all in how you spin it, I think.
It goes further than that too. I think having the ability to work on your own things, it gives you the ability to buy a fixer-upper house to make money that way, flipping. there's so many avenues you can take that I think people disregard.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Do you think that like when you have friends that have come in and they've started and they're growing in this company, was their opinion initially that this was like a dirty job and they didn't really want to do it? They were just going to get a check for now, and their opinions have changed?
I would never bring anybody into our company purposely who's looking for a temporary job. Actually, that's not what we're looking for most of the time. Unless we were looking for a guy, you want to clean the trucks, organize tools and all that stuff, sure, for a couple days a week. But we're looking for long term.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we don't have a fit for temporary. I mean, that's part of the qualification process, is just that. Like, we're going to put a lot of time and energy into you, and we want somebody who wants to be here for a while. And the exception has been, we've had a few people that seem to just want to be helpers. In fact, a few of them even articulated that. I just want to pick up a check. That's the minority, but I have accepted a few of those where it's like, you know what? He's a good helper. He doesn't really want to progress.
Mm-hmm.
Or when I've hounded him, he's sort of just been ho-hum about it. That, again, is the majority. I'm not just looking for a warm body. I mean, we really try and qualify the heck out of people during the interview and trial period to identify, like, this may not be for you if you're just looking for a paycheck or a stopgap measure,
What are some of the things you're doing in this interview then? Because there's another problem. I think, we just go looking for that warm body. And that's what I did, like the first 3 times I've hired somebody, right? I just found the person that was like, yeah, I'll give it a try. And I've gotten a little bit better at doing a little bit more of an interview each time. But at this point, with 20 guys, you've got to have a formal interview process that has to make it, a little bit better.
We don't.
A lot that don't get a second phone call, I think. And a lot of it being Facebook is a big thing. Look on Facebook, man. Or, we're in a really small town too. It's like, hey, do you know this guy? Is he into drugs? Is he reliable?
Mm-hmm.
What is? And it takes quite a bit. I've stuck my neck out for people, and it's bit me in the butt before. So it goes that way. And then in the interview process, I'm not sure. I haven't gone in for an interview in a while, but they have brought in the installer who's going to work with the apprentice before, and we'll sit down and talk to each other and see who's the best fit, personality based as well, because you got to hang out with this guy.
Okay.
During that process too, and I'll tell you, I just talked to Bradford Denny in the NTCA. Has been a friend of mine forever. He's got one of the most amazing, and he was supposed to email it to me and he didn't, amazing set of interview questions I have ever seen. You'd think he was interviewing for MIT or something. It's spectacular. I mean, crazy philosophical questions and spatial and, all these kinds of questions. They're a multi-generational family company as well. We don't do any of that. I sit down with a guy. It's pretty informal. We have a conversation. And very often, if I like the person, I'll say, hey, do you got an hour? And we'll jump in the truck and take a drive to job sites. And we'll spend 2 hours sometimes talking on the drive, visiting job sites, so they get to see what actually, especially if they don't have any experience. They are an experienced tile setter. I've asked to see their tools. We provide everything. It's another distinction.
Experienced tile setters worse.
They got a bad golf swing. But I want to see what kind of tools they're using, what kind of methods they're employing. I want to see what the truck looks like. I'm looking for just the same way I'm interviewing a client. And we've talked actively about this with our guys that are going into people's homes. Look at the books. Look at the political signs out front. Identify the age demographic. Even right down to the presentation. These things really matter. And I'm getting off track. But, Mrs. Jones from Georgia, that's 79 years old, isn't going to like denim blue because denim is hippies. Colonial blue, she'll go for all day long. I mean, just identifying demographic tendencies and generalizations can go a long ways as well. I mean,
Definitely.
And that's with employees or prospective clients.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're interviewing and looking for tells and insights along the same lines very much. And sometimes we have to do it in a really compressed and rapid manner, but you get better with practice.
Well, so you don't have something super formal, but I mean, there's things you're looking for. Either there's cues. Like I said, I think a lot of times it's we're putting ads up on Facebook. You call a couple people, you find the person that can like answer a couple questions the best and tells you they're going to show up, and then they get mad when, hey, this person didn't show up Monday morning when they said they would. Well, had we taken the time to actually schedule a formal interview and told them that they needed to be there at 2 p.m., and they didn't show up, well, now we've already seen their true colors. We don't need to be frustrated Monday morning. So it's as much us learning how to run a proper business as it is
on my end. If I'm doing the interview and I'm the owner, I'm doing the interpersonal thing. I rarely even look at a resume, honestly. I hand that to somebody in our office, and then I take them out for a ride if I like them, and we talk, and I come back to the office and usually don't make a spot determination.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get a hold of you. Sometimes I'll hire on the spot. Actually, we do that quite a bit because it's a trial period. We have at least a 2-week trial period. And, we can look at a resume and we can talk all you want, but kind of proof's in the pudding. Yeah. And we're very transparent about that. Like, this has to be a win-win. You have to love it here. We have to like you. Otherwise, no deal. And that's always on the table. We'll shake hands and amicably go our separate ways. No problem. Because if it doesn't work out for you, you're unhappy, you're not going to be profitable. And if it doesn't work out for us, so we always reserve that right on both ends. But then it does get formal. If we hire them, they begin with my office. There is an employee handbook. They get reviewed. Their expectations are clearly defined as to, like you said, this is when we show up. This is your boss. This is who you directly report to. All of the intricacies of working in a company are identified, and all of that. Wages are specified, mm-hmm. all of those sorts of things, obviously. But, I have the benefit of being an owner, so I don't have to deal with all of that sort of thing. Again, the benefit of a larger company structure.
Yeah. Okay. I can go all day. I know you can go all day.
So can I.
I know. Rogue, is there something that I didn't ask that I should have asked you about your generation? Is there something that needs to be made abundantly clear that, like, the, quote unquote old guys just miss every time and you wish we understood?
Man, I don't know. I can't think of anything else that's like sitting on the tip of my tongue that you guys are missing. Maybe just the old dogs, new tricks things, man. Be willing to learn things.
We need to be open to learning new things, is what you're saying.
Maybe, yeah. Looking at things from a different perspective, mm-hmm. Maybe.
Okay. No, I agree. I think that's huge, and I think that's a lot of the problem sometimes is that we're trying to communicate with a generation that doesn't identify things the same way as us, and if we don't learn how to, operate on your level some, then we're just talking to a brick wall. So I think that's great advice. Trask, anything that you're doing that I should have asked about and didn't?
Well, just generally speaking, I think with respect to the generational thing, I think we're incentivizing wrong. We're communicating incorrectly more often than not. And I think we just, of course, it's always, lots of deviation on the individual level. But generally speaking, the incentive structures and the cultural needs are so radically different that we can't just blanket approach it anymore at all. Wes's concern is the financial well-being of this company. Is this company financially stable? Is the leadership on top of it? Are they ethical and moral and going to be here for a long time so he has a job for the long haul and doesn't have to worry about that? Rogue's generation, the millennials, they really don't care. They'll just go get another job on LinkedIn. I mean, their concerns are very different. You know, they can be financially motivated, but they need a lot. They're more concerned with flexibility, diversity, input, and the cultural, zeitgeist of the entirety of the corporation. Where do they have a place and do they have a voice? The more intrinsic things are highly valued. Personal liberty thing with the Gen Xers. And we need to be able to be dynamic enough to address and understand whose language we need to be speaking when we're talking about motivational structures and incentive packages, because we very often get it wrong. I had joked about this, but, like Rogue's generation values the swag and the stickers and all the trappings of the belonging and the sense of place. That's important that their peer groups notice that and that they're noticed for those things. They like to be identified as having a different experience, and they'll broadcast it. They wear it on their sleeve. The old guard and even the Gen Xers, it's not as big a deal. It increases as we get closer to the millennium spectrum, but we're really bottom line. My dad's generation, the baby boomers, very much bottom line. I can motivate them with monetary incentives till the cows come home.
Yeah.
I'll give you time and a half and they'll do whatever they want. If I offer up time and a half to a millennial, he'll say, what am I doing? Well, the baby boomer's like, I don't care. You tell me and I'll do it for that money. Yeah. And the millennial will say, I'm just going to go do what I do on the weekend. It's Friday. It's not really worth it. And I'm like, are you kidding me? How can you not be motivated? I'm talking about this. Wes just walked right in front of my truck.
Shaking his head on the phone.
And he's literally shaking his head while we're both on the phone in our vehicles. Like, I just don't get it. And so it's absolutely a different language. And I think we increasingly, as we're both, dwelling in this workspace, whether you're a small company or a larger company, that, the same concerns are going to apply, probably more so, as you said, in a smaller, what you call the average installation firm, which may be 3 to 5 people across the country. That's going to be hyper important, because you can't just apply the same rules that have worked for a long time. It's not going to work. It's going to be a really long road, and you're going to be frustrated because you're not going to communicate effectively. You're not going to motivate effectively. You're not going to grow effectively. You're going to be stuck in that old model, and the old model is falling quickly by the wayside.
One thing, if we're talking about incentives as far as pay and such goes, I know we started to talk about how we made, raises, essentially, how raises are presented or earned. We do it in a way of sort of the lead guy determines what the helper makes. And I make that very clear when I get a new guy.
Yeah.
I will tell him, right away, I will work to get you a raise. You show me what you've learned, what you're capable of. You prove me you can set tile, hell, I'll get you a raise and I'll run your cuts for you. We're going to work at your pace, basically. When you're ready, I'll go. And, when I feel impressed, then I'll make a point of going into the office and saying he deserves more money than this.
Yeah, and that is, as far as we're concerned, that is they are my advocates. My lead installers become my advocates and my eyes and ears.
So I wouldn't say there's like a benchmark system of any sort. I just feel like when he's making me more productive and it's noticeable, then I'm going to go in like, hey, it's time he's busting ass,
Well, and that's what I've told multiple people that have worked for me, like, look, all you got to do is, like, the more money you can make me, the more money I can pay you. And we'll be fair about it. Like, we'll know, because I track how much we're getting done a day. Like, I'll let you know what you're doing, and I'll point out, hey, like, we're stuck. Yeah, we're stuck in a rut. Like, you need to find a way to be more productive. You could look here, here, or here, and it just falls on deaf ears, I feel. But it could be
sometimes I don't know the lack of drive or what, but I do the exact same thing. If we killed it one day, I'll be like, hey man, that was awesome, we killed it. I'm gonna go in and I'll vouch for a bonus for us because we did so good today. or
Yeah. And we heavily incentivize with bonuses because we track jobs, profit and loss. Sometimes a lot of times we're profit and loss in jobs before they're even complete. So we know where we're at on the job if it's a big job.
Yeah.
But I would also say, we don't just have owners listening to this podcast. We got every, place along the spectrum.
There's employees that listen. There's retailers that listen.
Yeah. And so if you're an employee, the best employee model I ever had from an employee standpoint about how to ask for a raise, I continue to be blown away by this. I had a guy that worked for us, and he was raised in a family business. I've had a couple of these. They're the best employees. But here's how they asked. They never asked for a raise, both of them. And I don't know how they both uniquely discovered this organically, but they both asked for a raise, so to speak, in the same manner. They would come to me and he would say, hey, I've taken on a helper. I'm also running a couple of other jobs for you and overseeing them down south. I'm also helping out with your slab crew, and I've learned how to polish. I think that's probably worth $1 to the company an hour more. Would you share that with me and give me 50 cents? He left us on good terms several years ago, and he was our highest paid employee because we can do this all day. If you make 100% more and ask for 50%, I don't really care if I'm paying you $100 an hour if you're bringing in 200.
Yes.
They never asked for a raise. They offered me. So in that sense, they functioned like their own company within a company. They were entrepreneurial enough to realize that they were in charge of their own destiny. They were both Gen X guys, but they both went on to run their own gig inevitably after about 10 years. But they had that wired into them. That was just magic to me. That was music to my ears. They didn't come in and ask for a raise. They demonstrated their worth. Then they asked for a share of it.
Yeah.
It was easy.
That's a no-brainer then, right? You've shown me what value you bring, and so now I'm kind of I'm the a-hole if I don't give you more money.
Oh, and you're an idiot. You know, if you can't identify that. However, that's two people out of, venturing a wild guess, 150.
Yeah.
I mean, why are we not getting that? If I'm an employee, I'm definitely going to think I've been weary as an owner many times and thought I would love to get in an organization and just make the owner oozes of money and hope that they'd share it with me and present it to them exactly like that.
Well, I think with your plan to incentivize like training your replacement, I think you're building that in. And that's what we want to do is we really want to build. I have a book. It's really short. It's called A Company of Owners. And it runs through stuff like that. Where like, essentially that's what we want, right? We want everyone to feel like they're part owner of the business. And they take pride in their aspect of it. They run it like it's their own little business. And then there's incentives behind that.
That's one of the few things that would seem to cross multi-generational boundaries because the baby boomer is a company man, dyed in the wool. The, Gen Xer definitely wants financial reward and definitely wants goals and all of that too, kind of as a hybrid. But the millennials definitely want the input and the control of their destiny and to be able to have a dynamic place where they're listened to in the culture. So that model actually does address a lot of the base needs of a lot of the different generations. So it's a brilliant idea.
Okay. Well, look, I got to stop us. So Rogue, where can everybody find you on social media?
Rogue Bergerson on Instagram, TikTok. We got a pretty big TikTok right now. Bergerson Tile on TikTok or Bergerson Tile on Instagram. I run our social media.
Okay. What's the website?
BergersonTile.com, I believe. Or BergersonTileandStone.com, maybe.
He knows. I love it. He knows
Websites
the Instagram.
Don't matter to millennials.
That was perfect. I don't know the website. It doesn't matter.
BergersonTile.com.
Okay,
yeah.
BergersonTile.com. And if anyone wants to reach out to you guys, if you don't mind throwing information out, cool. If you do, don't worry about it. Where can they reach you, Trask, if they would like?
Yeah, we're Google us, right? We're in Astoria, Oregon.
I'll put down our company phone number, if you want to get a hold of us for whatever, 503-325-7767. That's Bergerson, Highlandstown.
Awesome. All right. Thank you,
hey,
gentlemen.
as a caveat, anybody wants to reach out if they're, this is, I have a role in the NTCA, but a real strong background in all the forums and all of that camaraderie stuff. If you're an employee or you're an employer, I love to talk shop. Obviously, I'm not even done talking. Seriously, reach out. We live the same lives. I've said this many times. I love learning from other people. I love sharing what I know with other people. If you hear this podcast and you want to talk candidly about, I don't know what to do with this. If you're not involved in an industry organization, get involved. But geez, I'm just another owner like you, or I was an employee like you. Call me. I'll talk shop with you. Seriously. It's a valid offer.
All right. Reach
You're an
out.
employee.
You can find them.
To us. We're hiring.
Yeah, we're always hiring.
There you go.
Absolutely. We'll talk relocation.
Correct. Look, you can go hang out at the Goonies house. They apparently know the owner or the former owner. They still own the house?
Yeah. Yeah, actually, one of our former employees, just left us. Was it Jacob's mom that had the place, Rogue?
Grandparents.
His grandparents owned it. They had 300 people a day on their porch.
I bet they did.
They live currently.
Is the pizza shop still there? Where he smashes the... You know what I read? What I heard recently is the reason the pizza slice had to get smashed on the window was to block out the McDonald's sign because McDonald's wasn't sponsoring, so they couldn't put it in the shot.
No product placement.
Exactly.
Love it.
Oh, awesome. All right. Thank you, gentlemen, so much for joining me. Thank you for talking about that. I think, we didn't get to the bottom of it. I don't know that we ever will, but we got to make steps in the right direction, and we're getting there with every conversation. We're letting people know what to look for, how to figure it out, how to better identify what we need to do to improve this industry. And at the end of the day, that's what matters, because it needs to be passed on, and it's not looking good at this point. So
evolve or die.
Yes. All right. Awesome. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it so much.
Yep,
Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Take care.
That's all the time we have for this week. To keep the conversation going, head on over to the Floor Academy Facebook group. Be sure to subscribe so you can hear each and every episode. We can be found on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, and most major podcast directories. Don't forget to leave a review and let us know what you think about the show. If you would like to be a guest, have questions or feedback, you can email us at flooracademypodcast@gmail.com. You can help support the show by becoming a patron over at www.patreon.com/flooracademy. Remember to learn while you earn.